Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Hello my loves, it's Monica and I am so excited today to share with you all some books that I have recently acquired. I've been sort of slowly collecting all of these books over the past few months at various bookstores in New York City, and I'm just so excited for all of them. I have quite a few Korean novels that have really piqued my interest over the past 2 months that I'm hyped to share, and then just like lots of different types of stories in general, from cozy winter reads to lots of fantasy, lots of angst, and everything in between. So really hyped to share all of these with you guys. I'd also love to hear from you all. If there are any books in this video that most interest you, please do let me know in the comments down below, or if there are any books that you've recently hauled yourself, definitely let me know. We could talk new book buys, always love to do that. But before I dive in and share all of the books that I have recently acquired, I do want to give a big thank you to this video sponsor, which is Book of the Month. So Book of the Month is a longtime partner of mine and one of my absolute favorite brands. They're a super popular and fast-growing online book service for readers that help you discover books you'll love. The way that it works is that their team each month vets hundreds of books in order to select a curated selection of new and early release titles so that you can spend more time reading and less time researching. This month I was particularly so excited to see that one of their picks was Peach Blossom Spring by Melissa Fu, and this has been one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it sounds absolutely breathtaking. So this is a historical fiction novel that's set in China, and we follow 3 generations of this one family. We start off in 1938. We start off by following Mei Lin, who her and her family are forced to flee their home in China because of the Japanese invasion that is occurring, and from there we follow these generations. So like next we follow her son, who was immigrated to America, and then his daughter Lisa, who was trying to reconnect with her heritage, and her father is really struggling to bridge that connection because he has so much trauma around just trying to keep his family safe. And I did just almost start crying because I think a lot of first generation Asian immigrants, that's a story that a lot of us can relate to, and yeah, it just sounds absolutely beautiful, and I'm so excited for this one. I was hyped when this was in this month's selection, so would definitely recommend. But one of the things that I do love about Book of the Month is that it is completely risk-free. So if you subscribe and there happens to be a month where you're just not feeling any of the picks, you can easily skip and choose a book the next month instead. Plus, you can get your first book for just $9.99 with my code MONICA. So if you would like to join me in reading Peach Blossom Spring and probably crying quite a bit, you should do that. But yeah, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. I'll have them linked down below where you can check them out and check out all of this month's picks. Now on to the rest of my book haul. Alright, so I'm going to start off with a couple books that I actually just picked up today. The first one is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This one, so many of you recommended this one to me. I don't know if I've ever been recommended a book as much as I was recommended this one. So I'm so excited. If you recommended this book to me, thank you. I listen. I listen to all of your recommendations, by the way. I have like a app, or in my notes app, I have like written down all of the book recs that you guys give me, and I knew I had to pick this one up because so many of you loved this one. So this is a middle grade novel, and in this one we follow Amari, whose older brother has been missing, and everyone believes that he's dead, but she has never believed that. But one day she discovers a ticking briefcase in her closet, and this sort of sets her on this journey for a competition within the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, or summer tryout, in order to join this secret organization and ultimately discover Quentin's whereabouts. She really gets thrown into this whole other world of magicians and fairies and magical creatures in general, but at the same time she's dealing with the fact that she, is going up against all of these kids who have been training for this their entire lives, and she's never touched magic before. And also at the same time, her form of magic is deemed illegal. So yeah, this just sounds so good. I love like a good entrance exam kind of fantasy. I don't know what the term for that would be, but I love those kinds of stories. So I'm really excited to dive into this one and just, yeah, see what this one is all about, because I know so many people love it. So then also today I picked up Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Chouet Dusapin. And this is a novel that was originally in French. It's been translated into English, and this is also the Corridathon group book. So I haven't posted my announcement video yet, but we have announced on social media. So if you aren't following me on Instagram, Twitter, etc., you might not have heard this yet, but Chloe and I are once again going to be co-hosting Corridathon. I will have a whole other video about that in the coming days, but this is our group book. So in this novel, we follow a young French-Korean woman who lives in Sokcho, which is a town on the border of North and South Korea. And she works at a guest house in this town, and one day one of the visitors or one of the guests is this French graphic novelist, and he basically gets her to give him tours of the area in order to discover like the authentic Korea. However, he takes no interest in the real Sokcho she knows, the gaudy neon lights, the scars of war, the fish market where her mother works. As she is pulled into his drawings, she is troubled by his vision of her until she strikes upon a way to finally be seen. I'm so keen to read this one. I feel like it's going to explore some really important topics around just the way in which white people often fetishize or engage with Asian culture. So yeah, very keen for this one. Really excited to read it with everyone participating in Corridathon. So I also got sent a copy of Siren Queen by Nai Vo, and I was so excited when I got this email because this is one of my most anticipated books of the year. Nai Vo's The Chosen and the Beautiful was one of my favorite books of last year, which was a Great Gatsby retelling, and I just absolutely adored the way that she wrote the fantasy in that book. Like the magic was just so, I don't know, it was like the kind of magic that feels so believable and real and like effervescent is the word that comes to mind. And I just love the way she writes so much. Her writing is just stunning. So I've been really excited for this one because this one is set in Hollywood, so 1920s Hollywood, I believe, and we follow Luli, who is an aspiring actress. However, this Hollywood is a little bit different from ours. It has that, again, that magical element that we saw in The Chosen and the Beautiful. The studios want to own everything from her face to her name to the women she loves, and they run on a system of bargains made in blood and ancient magic, powered by the endless sacrifice of unlucky starlets like her. For those who do survive to earn their fame, success comes with a steep price. Luli is willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means becoming the monster herself. I just think that sounds so good. Then I recently picked up Beasts of a Little Land by Joo-hae Kim, and I love, oh my gosh, this cover is beautiful. I have heard such phenomenal things about this one. This is a historical fiction novel, multi-generational. These are all buzzwords I love, set in Korea. So one of the blurbs is what like has me so excited for this one. In Beasts of a Little Land, Joo-hae Kim has taken the concept of inyon, human thread, to weave a beautiful story in which human connections and encounters are preordained. She explores ideas of fate, fortune, and destiny against the backdrop of great turbulence and historic events that transpired on the Korean peninsula during the 20th century, a spectacular debut filled with great characters and heart. And yeah, I just like, all I need to know. Very excited for this one. It just sounds absolutely stunning. Sounds like it's going to make me cry a lot and also have lots of amazing conversations with my mom, which I always love. So yeah, I knew that this was going to be one of my favorite books of this year, and I'm hoping that this one might be my next read, I think, because I've just been like so keen to read it and I don't think I can wait for Corridathon. Then I finally picked up Iron Widow. This one is so funny because I posted a story and I think like this much of the book you could see, and I had multiple people being like, did you get Iron Widow? Which I think is amazing and just shows how much people love this book, which is why I bought it, because I feel like people are so like intensely in love with this story. I don't even really know much about it. I was just like, well, everyone seems to love it, so I'm gonna give it a go. In this one, there are basically aliens outside of the Great Wall, and in order to protect against them or defend against them, we have these like mechas, and it's like they co-pilot it, so it's a man and a woman, and the woman is like basically a concubine pilot, and they're like forced to do this, and sometimes they die, and so our main character's sister dies, and so she goes out and gets revenge for this, and she's labeled an Iron Widow, and the story sort of takes off from there, and it's filled with lots of revenge and violence and intensity, and yeah, it just sounds amazing. Very excited to dive into this one. I feel like this is definitely going to be just like a roller coaster of a read, and that sounds like a great time. Then I have A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk, and this one has been billed as like Downton Abbey mystery novel with magic and gay. What else do I need? I feel like I haven't really heard much about this one, but the prose is supposed to be stunning, and like everything about the synopsis just sounds like right up my alley. So yeah, I'm hyped for this. Then I picked up The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. And this one, I've literally never heard anyone else who has read this book. I don't know anyone else who has read this book, at least. And I went onto Goodreads, and there are like not very many reviews on Goodreads either. This book is set during the 17th century, and we follow Ursula, who is, she has dreams of being a playwright, and the novel itself is written in a variety of formats, including as plays, which I think sounds really cool. And she wants to be a playwright, but her family has other expectations for her. And so this is, you know, her story of trying to pave her own path. It's supposed to be a really wonderful coming of age story, and progressive and feminist and all of that. And it just like, the cover is stunning. The vibes I get from it just feel very whimsical and exciting. So yeah, I'm hoping this will be like a cool little like find or discovery of a book for me, because it's one that, again, I haven't really heard anyone talking about, but it sounds phenomenal. So hopefully it lives up to my hope for it. Then I picked up The Cabinet, and this was originally in Korean, translated into English. And this is basically an anti-capitalist fiction novel that's also a fantasy, part fairy tale, like a little bit of everything. So basically there's this cabinet called Cabinet 13, and in it are the files of the symptomers, and these are people who have these like unique abilities who might mark the beginning of a new species. And so that sounds very exciting. However, we follow Mr. Kong, who is this like harried office worker, and he doesn't find it exciting at all. He spends his days looking after the cabinet, so to him the symptomers are just a headache, from the woman whose doppelganger broke up with her boyfriend to the man with a ginkgo tree growing from his fingertip. And then there's that guy who won't stop calling, asking to be turned into a cat. A richly funny and fantastical novel about the strangeness at the heart of even the most ordinary lives, from one of South Korea's most acclaimed novelists. I might have made up the anti-capitalist part. I don't remember. I feel like I got that from something, but maybe I'm putting that on the wrong book. But I think that is part of what this book is also. Anyways, I love the mix of genres in this one. Like, it's supposed to be a mix of science fiction, fantasy, fairy tale, and reality, and I just think that sounds so good. Another Korean novel, this one was not translated though, The Red Palace by June Her. Y'all know this is one of my most anticipated books of the whole year. I love June Her's books. They're just such good mystery novels. All three have been set during the Joseon era in Korea, and all three have been absolute bangers. So I expect this one to be no different. This one in particular is set amongst the backdrop of like royalty, so I'm very excited for that, because I love a good like royal history K-drama. It's one of my favorite genres. So yeah, this one has been high up on my list for that reason. I so badly want these books adapted. They would make, like, imagine like a Netflix trilogy of these or something. Ugh, it'd be so good. Next, I picked up Emma. This is a historical fiction manga. I don't really know a lot about it. I know that it does have to do with romance, and my friend Emily highly recommended it, really loved it, so I'm keen to read it also. I haven't really read anything like this before. Like, it's given me kind of like Downton Abbey vibes, which I don't know why. That's always something I love in like it is an instant buy for me in books, because I don't like the show Downton Abbey, but I do like things that have been recommended that are like, that people say like, oh, if you like Downton Abbey, read this. I always tend to like those things, but I don't like Downton Abbey. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. This is not a retelling of Emma by Jane Austen, by the way. I should say that because that's what I initially thought. I haven't read manga in a while, so I've been really wanting to get back into that again. So this is my first step back into the manga world. Then I also finally picked up the sequel to Raybearer Redemptor, and oh my gosh, this cover is just the prettiest thing. This series, the UK editions of this series are just next level, so beautiful. The first book in this series was one of my favorite books that I read last year. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite fantasy books. It's so good. I highly recommend it to everyone. Even if you think like, oh, I don't really like YA anymore, I don't think I'm really into YA fantasy, please just read Raybearer. Please, it's so good. It deserves to be read. It's so like whimsical and magical, and like the characters are so interesting and like full and fully fleshed out, and I loved the relationships that each of them had. Like that just really kept me going, and I don't mean that in like angsty romance, but just like legitimately the relationships and the bonds between them was just like so good in that first book, and the world and magic was just so unlike anything I had read. And yeah, I just absolutely adored that one, so I'm so excited to have the sequel in my hands. I was supposed to read this last year, and honestly life got a little hairy, so I'm gonna be reading it this year. In the first book we followed Tari Sai, and she grows up very isolated from other people. She's sort of like being trained, but she doesn't know what she's being trained for, and she is always sort of seeking out her mother's love and affection. And then one day she's brought in front of her mom, and her mom sets her on a task to go to the kingdom and infiltrate the palace and become one of the core members of the king's circle. And basically like, this isn't just like, oh, you're an advisor, it's like you're literally linked, you're bonded. And so she's told to do that, but she's also cursed with the fact that once she earns the prince's trust, she has to kill him. And so that's sort of the beginning of the novel and where everything takes off, and it's just so good, and I loved it so much, and I'm so excited for the second one. Then I picked up When You Trap a Tiger, and this one is a Newbery Award winner, and there's something about Newbery winners, I always cry, so I'll probably cry in this one. Honestly, from the synopsis alone, I sometimes almost cry. So in this book we follow Lily, and her family have moved in with their Harmony, or grandmother, and her grandmother is telling her all these stories, and her grandmother is also very sick, and yeah, that is the story. And it's a story of like Korean mythology and history and family, and I think it's going to destroy me. I think it's going to just really hit me in the heart, considering I'm already crying, and I literally just read Harmony, Will You Tell Us a Story? So we'll see how this goes for me. Another Korean novel, oh my goodness, just all the Korean books, Love in the Big City. This is one that my friend Matthew highly recommended to me, and I was so excited to read it because it is a queer novel that's been translated from Korean, and I don't think I've read any novels that are queer and translated from Korean. So that alone was like a big sell for me. And in this one we follow Young, who is a cynical yet fun-loving Korean student who pinballs from home to class to the beds of recent Tinder matches. He and Jae-hee, his female best friend and roommate, frequent nearby bars where they suppress their anxieties about their love lives, families, and money with rounds of soju and freezer-chilled Marlboro Reds. I really struggle with that brand's name. Anyways, this sounds beautiful. I've heard fantastic things about it, and I'm also excited to read something that's set in sort of like the nightlife of Korea also, because I got a little bit of that in If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha, which is one of my favorite novels of all time, and so I definitely want more of that. So yeah, this one sounds phenomenal, and I also got the UK cover for this one because I think it's stunning. I just talked about this in my most recent vlog, so I'm not going to wax on too much, but I got my first Agatha Christie. I went with Crooked House. I watched a bunch of like where to start with Agatha Christie videos, and this is one that sounded the most interesting and that people recommended as a good starting place. And yeah, it's set in a mansion. Someone's murdered. Someone has to solve the murder. I'm excited for a little puzzle of a book. Finally picked up the sequel to The First Sister, The Second Rebel. This is a space opera, and I loved how unabashedly queer the first novel was. We follow a whole host of characters. This is one that I definitely would recommend the audiobook for also, because at least the first one was a full cast. I don't know if they did that for the second one too, hopefully, because I loved that first audiobook. If you've been wanting a good space opera to kind of fall into that's not too complex, I think this is a great series to start with. So definitely recommend. Very excited for part 2. Then I picked up For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, and this one I picked up because it just gave me angsty romance vibes, and that's honestly, like, sometimes you just want a good angsty romance. If any of you have recommendations for a good, like, angsty fantasy romance, please always let me know. But this one definitely sounds like a good one. I think it's like a Beauty and the Beast slash Little Red Riding Hood retelling. Obviously the cover gives Little Red Riding Hood, but I've heard Beauty and the Beast from other people, so I don't know. It's supposed to be super atmospheric with lots of folklore, kind of gives Naomi Novik vibes, if you will, which also I love. Well, I've only read one Naomi Novik book that I loved, which is Spinning Silver, but I really loved that book. So if this is anything like that, I'll probably love it too. Then I picked up this adorable book, Moominland Midwinter, and I've actually never read any of the Moomin novels. I've only like watched Moomin related content. So I saw this at the bookstore and it was so beautiful. Like, just the design of it was so pretty, like everything from the end papers to the like little Moomin on the cover. I just loved so much, so I just thought this would be such a cozy winter read. I did realize afterwards, however, that this is not the first book in the series. However, I don't think it really matters, so I'm hoping that I'm fine to dive in with this one. But yeah, it just looks so darling, and I love it, and I love Moomin. I love Moomin so much, so that's why I picked this one up. Then I picked up Pierre Nacey by Susanna Clarke, and I read most of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but I really struggled with finishing it, so I'm hoping that this one, being like a third of the size, I will get through it a little bit easier. This is one of those novels where a house really has its own personality. From the blurb, it says, Pierre Nacey's house is no ordinary building. Its rooms are infinite, its corridors endless, its walls lined with thousands upon thousands of statues. Within the labyrinth of halls, an ocean is imprisoned, waves thunder up staircases, rooms are flooded in an instant. But Pierre Nacey is not afraid. He understands the tides as he understands the pattern of the labyrinth itself. He lives to explore the house. And yeah, I love these kinds of novels that are like super immersive and just like really all about the vibe and about like creating this very like magical, whimsical world that you can get lost in. That's like my favorite. All right, guys, we are getting to the last 2 books. So first we have Brown Girls by Daphne Palasi Andreades, and this one I recently talked about in my most recent vlog. I got to go to the book launch for this one, and it was such a lovely experience. This one is set in Queens, New York, and in it follows a chorus of the women of color who live in Queens, New York. And it's told through first person plural, which just sounds fascinating to me. Very keen to see like how that is done. So yeah, that just sounds phenomenal. And then I have this novel, which is so heavy, oh my gosh. This is called A True Novel by Mine Mizumura, and this is a novel in 2 parts. It's literally a box set, and there's 2 books in here, and it is a retelling of Jane Eyre, but from a Japanese perspective. So that just sounds phenomenal. I'm so keen to just read more and see what that is all about. My friend Matthew also recommended this one to me, and it just sounds lovely. So we'll see how I get along with that one, but oh my gosh, is it heavy. I had to put that down. It's a little bit of a workout just to hold it. So yes, those are all of the books that I have recently hauled. I'm so excited, over the moon for each and every one of these books and all of these stories that I just cannot wait to dive into, and I'm hoping I'll be able to get to all of these this year. Really trying to prioritize reading more of the books that I own now, because I did sort of have a realization recently that I've been acquiring quite a few books and I need to like make my way through more of them before I continue acquiring more. But yeah, I would again love to hear from you all if any of these most interest you, if you read any of these, or if there are just some books that you are excited about that you also recently hauled. Let me know in the comments down below. Once again, thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. A link to them will also be in the description box down below. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye!